Years ago, I watched my mother lose her job after developing really painful carpal tunnel from years of repetitive data entry work. I remember her entering thousands of keystrokes. She used to enter data from microfilm into a computer, hundreds of transactions a day. And she later developed painful carpal tunnel surgery, took time off to recover, and when she returned, she was later let go. And that moment really stuck with me. It helped me open my eyes and see how much pain and efficiency can come from everyday processes and how much opportunity there is, but technology is used thoughtfully. That experience led me to build Connex, a platform designed to automate e-commerce and accounting and eliminate the friction behind the scenes. But as we've helped more businesses grow, we've noticed a specific group facing a massive friction hurdle: manufacturers. For decades, manufacturers have relied on distributors and handshakes, and today they're being forced to navigate the Amazon effect. They have the best products in the world, but if they can't figure out how to sell directly to the end user on a platform like Amazon or even a Walmart, they risk becoming invisible. And that's why I'm excited about today's guest. Brian Beck is a founder of Enciba and author of Billion Dollar B2B E-commerce. He's a go-to expert for manufacturers who are trying to master Amazon without losing their minds or their margins. Today's conversation is about how manufacturers can use Amazon as a growth engine, how to handle the channel conflict with their old distributors, and how to scale that presence effectively. Brian, to kick us off, how did you get started in B2B e-commerce, and who are your typical clients?
Yeah, well, Joe, thanks again for having me on your session here. I'm excited to chat about this stuff. And yeah, so my journey in e-commerce started, I'm going to date myself, in the early, or actually mid 1990s on the consumer side, back when that was all new, and was in that side of e-commerce for many years. I ran e-commerce for Harbor Freight Tools, for PacSun, some big resellers or retailers and brands in the consumer side. Got into B2B about 8 or 9 years ago now, and really, what I joke that I got there because I wanted to continue to feel young, because B2B is so sort of behind in many ways. I wrote a book, as you mentioned, about B2B e-commerce called Billion Dollar B2B E-commerce. I took my experience in building successful brands on the consumer side and building their e-commerce capabilities, and a lot of the lessons learned there, and pulled them over to the B2B side. Now, B2B is very different in many ways, but it has a lot of commonality at the same time. And so I documented a lot of that in my book, talked and interviewed probably 100 different companies for that. And really, I just love the B2B side because the companies they're very thoughtful. They make great products, and all this is just so much opportunity for them. This whole notion of e-commerce and digital transformation, and now we've got AI in the mix, and really just a fascinating and ever-changing kind of industry. And so I'm fortunate to be a part of it, and happy to talk to you more about Amazon, where I spend a lot of my time these days with my company Enciba.
Yeah, you mentioned in your book that a lot of companies, they're unable to sell their products effectively, and so you're helping B2B companies get on Amazon. I know they have a business customer. They allow businesses to play on net terms, because I have Connex customers who ask us to program software to do Amazon business to business. So I definitely look forward to asking you more questions about that. So what is a problem that manufacturers, why do companies call Enciba for help?
Well, I mean, for B2B manufacturers, they've traditionally done business in a way that, it's a traditional channel oriented type business. And again, I'm speaking about the manufacturer side, where they historically have, the chain of sort of supply chain has been pretty simple for many, many years, hundreds of years, really, where manufacturers will make products, they'll sell them to a reseller, distributor, retailer, dealer, and then that dealer or distributor will then sell them to an end customer. Very relationship based, and there's been sort of a traditional path. Now, what's happened in the last 15, 20 years, and really acutely in the last 10 years, is Amazon and other marketplaces have disrupted all of this. So e-commerce has disrupted it, and it's really driven by the buyer, right? The buyer's changed, and their expectation has changed, and they look for a digital experience. They're searching online, they want to transact online. And so our role as Enciba is to come in and help manufacturers with understanding that change, and then to enable them to sell effectively on Amazon using the right approach that doesn't cause channel conflict. There's a lot of potential for channel conflict, unfortunately, in the B2B world because of those traditional relationships. And manufacturers are uncomfortable with the change. And so we come in and help them align internally. We help them to establish the right strategy. to understand how Amazon does business because it's different than how they've done business for decades, and then to execute those programs. So to build the program out, the content, the advertising, the brand management, the forecasting, the integrations, all the things that are necessary to be effective on Amazon is what we handle. So we're Amazon experts. We're like a plug-in Amazon department is the way I like to say it for B2B manufacturers.
And many Amazon manufacturers are seeing Amazon as a threat to their existing distributors, because you mentioned in your book that it was like 40% of e-commerce goes through Amazon now, and people are doing a lot of research before they buy products. Buyers have changed, and clients want a forward-facing website. They want to make it really easy. How do you help them reframe Amazon as a strategic partner rather than a competitor?
Well, it's funny. There's a book called Good to Great, Joe. I don't know if you ever read it. It talks about
Yeah,
have you read it?
I've read part of that. Yes,
It's a great book, and I read it, 15 years ago, and maybe it's probably 20 years old now. And I cited my own book. One of the things that they talk about is confronting the reality. He called it the brutal reality, and the companies that outperform their peers really confront the reality. And the reality is in all of this is that the buyer has changed. The B2B buyer is now different. The consumer is now different, and they're going to Amazon first for search. 70% of search per product now starts on Amazon, not on Google. Now, not even on LLMs or the next generation of our world here in terms of search answer engines. But it's happening for a product on Amazon. And so confronting the reality that buyer has changed their behavior where they're researching product is a necessity. Now, there's approaches you can take. B2B manufacturers are very worried about disruption. Channel disruption is a huge concern, whether that's internal disruption, the sales team, e-commerce is going to compete for my buyers' dollars and my relationships, or external conflict wherein a company may be selling to a distributor and they feel like, Amazon and other marketplaces are disintermediating their traditional revenue. I'm just changing I'm changing from one channel to another. I'm just shifting channel around. It's actually not true in many ways. If there's two elements to this. One is taking a smart approach to Amazon and having the right strategy so you can control things like what's sold there, price, content, your brand presence, and not let the market control you, because it will if you don't have a proactive Amazon program. And then two is really understanding that to some degree this is existential and the world has changed and your buyer is just going to a different place in many cases. Going back to Good to Great, acknowledging that reality is really important for companies, particularly a lot of these traditional companies that have relied on channels for years, and business has been just good enough where they haven't felt the need to embrace digital change across the organization. And Amazon is right in there in that mix, if that makes sense, Joe. I'm sure you're seeing the same things.
Yeah, I mean, many of our B2B e-commerce customers are mixed. They're putting orders into their accounting tool and then syncing them to their distributors, wholesalers, and they're also trying to sell on Amazon. So it's definitely been a change. We're on the data side, so we see numbers coming in like sales tax and shipping and items. So I see the data, and so I'm trying to interpret what a lot of the data means.
Yeah.
So at Connex, speaking of data, we see the data mess that happens when manufacturers start selling on Amazon, especially with mismatched products, which is a common problem.
Yeah.
Because they can allow the same customer can have the same listing multiple times. I think they can have different SKUs for the same product, but for marketing purposes, they'll have 4 listings, and that messes things up. Even to have thousands, hundreds of thousands of orders instead of a bunch of small big ones. I don't need 40 orders with one product. I can have one order with a quantity of 40. What are the biggest operational shocks that manufacturers face when they make this transition?
My goodness. Well, there's a lot to unpack there, Joe. There's, operationally. So when you think about, and you guys live this, I mean, this is your business, right? So operationally, there's several challenges that a traditional manufacturer will have as they think about Amazon. One is, to your point about, the finance side of things, right? I mean, number one, it's a different cost structure than they're used to. So you've got if you're selling using what's called Seller Central or 3P on Amazon, it's essentially a marketplace transaction. Amazon takes the product, takes the product, the order and the transaction, but they never actually own the product. They're passing it through to you. And so they facilitate. And in that facilitation, there's this whole series of costs, and you alluded to some of them. Things like commission rates and FBA fees, fulfillment fees, other things, storage fees, and those things need to be accounted for and anticipated. So number one, you've got this whole notion of, sort of the difference in the transaction. A traditional B2B manufacturer is selling against a purchase order on a wholesale basis, and they're shipping a container, or a truckload or an LTL load or whatever to a distributor or buyer who's then stocking that product and they own it. Amazon and 3P never owns it. So you have this issue of consignment inventory where, product may be sitting in an FBA fulfillment center and it needs to be accounted for differently. So, and you guys live this and you provide solutions around this, right? So this is something you can help with, but there's a lot of B2B companies that really struggle with that. And then there's related to that, it's the operational side, which is, the fulfillment, forecasting, operational support, getting the product ready for fulfillment in Amazon, labeling requirements, boxing, shipping requirements, things of that nature that also can cause some challenges. So that's that side. And then you also alluded to in your question, the whole notion of duplicate products. Yes, that's a huge problem on Amazon, particularly when a brand does not control its presence on Amazon. You'll end up with duplicate listings put there by resellers who are probably unauthorized, or you don't even know who they are. And those folks will list products because they want to get around Amazon's algorithms. And they want to show up without any competition on that product listing. And so they're incentivized to do that. So you end up, if you're not controlling Amazon, you end up with, you might end up with 10 product listings on the same exact product. And it confuses the heck out of the customer and really can be really damaging to your, not only price integrity, but to your overall brand presence with all this.
Yeah, we've definitely heard that. A lot of our customers are trying to get into what's called the buy box.
Yes. Right.
And they have to make sure that their reviews are positive, that they have the inventory in stock, and if they're overselling product and cancellations, they get lower on the list. And what I've been told from Amazon sellers, if you're not on the first page, forget it.
Oh yeah, the volume is all first page. 70% of Amazon buyers don't buy things beyond page 1. So it's a search game, and Amazon has billions, literally billions of products on it. So it is as much or more of a search game than Google is, and any of these search engines are. And and now you've got AI, the Rufus technology on Amazon, which is
I also read a guide that they've blocked LLMs from indexing their site.
That's right, they did. Yes. So you have lots of, and gosh, we can unpack a lot there, Joe, right? There's the whole AI side of this is so fascinating, and it's changing. And yes, you're right, Amazon did block that. And that's kind of a bet, I think, in some ways, because by blocking that, they're not allowing the indexation of that content on other LLMs. And so they have their own LLM, right? And they're betting on the fact they're going to continue to be, I think, the source of products, the place people go when they have any buying intent for product. It's a calculated bet, I think. And you probably saw how much they're investing in AI. It's $200 billion this year. That was in their earnings release recently. It's incredible how much this is changing the game, I think, and will change the game for companies like Amazon.
And manufacturers often think that they can't compete with Amazon natives who are agile and cheap. Yeah. What unique advantages do established manufacturers have that they aren't leveraging enough on the platform?
Man, what a great question. It's to me, it's with anything commerce, Joe, it's about the product and differentiation of that product and how good the product is. The reason some ways we have a business is that a lot of B2B companies, manufacturers, are not just confronting the reality of what's going on here, and they're not embracing the change that is occurring with the B2B buyer, with the consumer, where they're not in front of that buyer on Amazon. It's a bit of a fear. Maybe it's a little bit of, hey, we don't really know this. We don't want to disrupt our channels. We don't have the internal capabilities to support this. But we're seeing that, that's all changing, right? So how do you compete with an agile first mover? Well, at the end of the day, you compete with product if you're a manufacturer, and that's what you're best in the world at. And fortunately, there's lots of companies. There's thousands of companies, traditional manufacturers that make fantastic product, and this is simply a channel shift that they haven't embraced. And the ones that do embrace it, will benefit from it. They can still create competitive advantage from embracing this channel shift. And all this learning from Amazon can also be applied to their own e-commerce capabilities on their own websites, which many manufacturers still don't have their own e-commerce capabilities. So this is a brave new world in some ways. The agile guys are just really good at Amazon. You see this coming out of Asia in particular, where you've got traditional or non-traditional manufacturers that they may be making product for your traditional brands, but they're coming into Amazon and just selling directly, and they're really good at Amazon and they're taking share. So to me, it's really it's really just, doubling down on what they're, best in the world at, but then recognizing the shift and putting the resources in place to pursue it. It's not rocket science. The best practices are really well established for Amazon at this point.
And speaking of best practices being really established for Amazon, how should a brand think about pricing on Amazon so they don't blow up their relationships with their long-term wholesale
Yeah.
partners? I guess you don't want products on Amazon less than the wholesalers because then you wouldn't buy from them.
Right. Well, it's a great question, and that's really the number one source of channel conflict on Amazon is when a brand doesn't manage its channel effectively. Amazon is the place where it manifests, but ultimately, from our experience, it is something that needs to be controlled outside of Amazon, and Amazon being one element of Amazon. So, or how channel conflict and price degradation occurs. So there's two ways to sell on Amazon: selling wholesale and what's called vendor central or 1P. In that case, you're letting Amazon set your retail price. There's also this method called seller central or 3P, in which you set your retail price. So in either instance, you need to have some channel controls in place to things like selling agreements, distribution agreements, MAP pricing or MAP pricing. That's minimum advertised pricing policies. These elements can help you control on Amazon and outside of Amazon where your prices are displayed, how much they're displayed for. So having a foundation of channel control is important. But then also, it does help when you have a 3P selling method on Amazon, if that's your primary approach, because you set the retail on your offers on Amazon. Anything you're offering to sell there as the manufacturer, you set the retail price for. So that really helps. But I will tell you that if you don't have a strategy around your channel and Amazon and more broadly for distribution, you can easily lose control of your pricing. It happens all the time. And one of the things that we often help companies with is the strategies to get that back into control and then implementing that. Sometimes it involves having a legal team or a law firm help you with certain aspects of contracts and putting policies in place. But again, there's best practices around all this stuff, and we've worked with companies to gain control of this and avoid that channel conflict that can come from price degradation. And then, to your point earlier, Joe, about winning the buy box, and then make sure you're winning the buy box on the sales of your brand on Amazon.
Because if you have the lowest price for the product, you're higher up on the search rankings, correct?
Yeah. So you talked about the buy box, and for those who aren't familiar with it, it's basically you can have a product on Amazon. You might have 10 or 15 companies competing to sell that same product. And guess what? A lot of those sellers they'll just drop the price on your product because that's the only way they can win the sale or win the buy box. The buy box is the buy button on the Amazon listing page. And so, yes, Amazon places a lot of importance on the price that's being offered for that sale of that product by those sellers. So you're absolutely right. And that can impact your search positioning. It could impact obviously your revenue.
I've heard rumors of some Amazon sellers actually dropping the price to the point where it's not profitable. Is that true?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sometimes, and frankly, Amazon is one of the culprits here itself, Amazon 1P, where the price will be dropped algorithmically in their case, or if some of those companies you mentioned, Joe, they use what's called repricers, and then those repricing software tools will watch the price on Amazon and will adjust it based on what rules you set as a seller. And yeah, in some cases it'll be below their cost on the product. So that does happen. Absolutely.
I'm not sure why they would. I mean, I assume that's a problem with the repricer. I don't know why you're selling something below profit. I mean, unless you have some sort of upsell or recurring revenue associated with it.
Yeah, I think companies, independent sellers try not to do that. Amazon, though, we've heard many cases of that happening. And often in Amazon's case, it's due to delivering, in their case, the best value to the customer. And they will drop the price to levels which are certainly below an MAP price, a MAP price, but also sometimes below their costs.
And Brian, can you tell us what Amazon's doing with its B2B channels through its Amazon business unit? I know they're allowing businesses to pay on terms. Any other updates?
Man, Amazon Business is it's not a best kept secret, but it's something that has come out of almost nowhere. Over the last 10 years, Amazon in 2015, I guess 11 years now, they started something called Amazon Business because they noticed B2B buyers, they noticed that products were going to commercial addresses that were being bought through Amazon Prime accounts and things. And they say, goodness, there's a whole cohort here of B2B companies buying, whether that's, plumbers and contractors or small businesses or even large businesses buying in bulk from Amazon. So they have Amazon, since that time, the last 11 years, Amazon Business has become one of the fastest growing parts of Amazon. We always do predictions for the year and what we think is going to happen with Amazon. Well, last year, by Wall Street reports, Bank of America said Amazon Business did $80 billion in B2B volume. And this year, we think in our predictions, we said, heck, we think we're going to cross 100 million. We think these are real numbers, and these are B2B buyers. These are people with business accounts signing up for Amazon Business, using it to buy after they prove that they're a business entity, using it to buy in bulk, using it to buy in repeat orders. Amazon Business, as you mentioned, allows businesses to buy on terms. They allow businesses to monitor and watch their spending, so spend management tools, give permissions. So let's say, Joe, if you own 5 locations and you had a manager at each of those locations, if you're a restaurant or whatever, or an HVAC company or something, you can give your general managers at each of those locations the ability to buy on your Amazon Business account. They have services programs now, restock programs, buying in bulk. Amazon is now putting what's called vending machines into facilities like warehouses and factories and office buildings, where for products that are purchased on a regular basis, they're actually physically replenishing vending machines in customer locations, big customers. I'm talking about bigger customers here. So they have managed spend programs now. It's incredible what Amazon is doing. They have very large teams on the Amazon Business side that are recruiting buyers and sellers. They're winning government contracts. They have municipal governments and universities that have signed up to do procurement for Amazon Business. This has come out of, it hasn't come out of nowhere. It's intentional. But for the first 8 or 9 years of Amazon Business, Amazon didn't talk about it. Andy Jassy finally talked about it 2 years ago in an earnings release. But it is a massive part of Amazon. And he said 2 years ago that they're only scratching the surface, and I believe them. I mean, they're huge. They're hugely invested in this. So it's fascinating what they're doing here, and we're very close to it because our businesses tend to be very traditional B2B businesses that we work with, and they are selling to those kinds of buyers that Amazon is targeting, whether that's school systems, contractors, universities, governments, et cetera. It's amazing. So it's, again, the world's changing here. Just like Amazon changed the world with consumers, they're changing it with the B2B buyer too.
And like you said, you're changing with B2B buyers because you're allowing these B2B companies to sell online and replace a manual process. But we're in 2026, and like you said, there's over 1 billion products on Amazon.
Yeah.
What's the one thing a manufacturer can do today to make sure they're not left behind by the digital first brands in the next decade?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, right? It's just this whole existential thing I mentioned before. You got all these pure plays out there that are, and pure play, what I mean by pure play is really brands. And again, a lot of them coming out of Asia that are taking share. And so what does a traditional manufacturer do? Frankly, it is just acknowledging this is not a channel problem. It is not a problem of not having best practices. It's not a problem of not knowing what to do. It's a problem of momentum, and it's a problem of inaction. And so when we think about what is a traditional manufacturer, small or large, to do around this issue, is just to recognize that the world has changed and to take action on it. Get out in front of it and start to take action, take some steps in areas which might not be comfortable. I talk all about this a lot in my book. In fact, my whole first chapter is all about the time is now and why, and what happened in retail and why Sears is no longer relevant, right? And retailers like that, or why Circuit City went out of business, or these big retailers that are no longer exist, or Blockbuster is another great example, right? These are companies that didn't confront the reality. And so it is an issue of just really, it's more managerial change and overcoming inertia at some of these larger companies. And even we see it down into mid-sized and small companies too, that have been doing business a certain way for maybe 100 years, right? And so it's just recognizing the change and taking some action, and then resourcing against it. You have to hire for this. Whether you hire a company like ours or hire an internal team, you have to resource, because you can't do this without expertise, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. Amazon's definitely very challenging to navigate. I know a lot of my customers tell me about some of the pains that they have. We are running out of time, so I will ask my last question. And for a Connex customer who has the Amazon presence is messy but feels overwhelmed, what's the first practical move you should make? Company with $5 to maybe $10 million in revenue. What do you think they should do? B2B?
Yeah, I I think number one, I mean, there's some basic things that a company like that can do to, number one, understand what's happening. I think the very first step that I love to tell companies to do, the CEO or the owner or whatever, is just go on Amazon and search your product category and see what's happening there. Just look at it. Amazon is at the forefront of e-commerce, and you'll see the state of where your business and category is by just looking at Amazon. Do a non-branded search, meaning look for something. Let's say you sell, I don't know, whatever tools, hand tools or power tools or something, or you make that. Just go on Amazon and search, for whatever cordless drill or something, and then you're going to find that there's competitors there you haven't competed with in the past. They're new competitors. These are companies that you may not recognize. You're likely now to see also traditional competitors there too, because the world is moving towards it. So the next step after getting a sense of what the lay of the land is then you've got to resource and understand what's happening. So whether that's talking to an industry expert like us and having us help you identify what the opportunity and challenges are, or just educating yourself through YouTube. Amazon has wonderful educational channels, like on how to build your own Amazon account, things like that. I mean, there's a lot of information in the marketplace to look at. Of course, I have my book too. You can read that and learn about what's happening with e-commerce for manufacturers, particularly B2B manufacturers. So anyhow, yeah, I think resourcing and knowledge and taking the time and stepping back from your business is really, and just, whether it's going away for the weekend and just spending some time looking at what's going on, and just have an open mind. Dispel your assumption around what you know about your business, because it is changing, and the customer is the one who's ultimately driving the change.
And Brian, I want to thank you for joining us and showing us how manufacturers can actually take control of their destiny on Amazon. You can connect with Brian Beck on LinkedIn or learn more about his team at enciba.com. And if you're a manufacturer or seller listening and you're tired of manual data entry that comes with Amazon growth, if you want cleaner data and automated accounting so you can focus on your strategy, visit connexecommerce.com. That's exactly why we built this. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with a manufacturer who's ready to scale their digital footprint in 2026. Thanks, Brian.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.